And as I start playing, I realize, screwed up. Forgot about the system of this game-specific rules for this. Which, because I was looking for artillery leaders, hey, they're here. And in order to make that a little bit more usable, I've added them here to the CP chart. Druitt is not actually in the organization chart as far as I can tell, because he's just loose with Napoleon, even though he's a divisional commander. And I also added the Cav generals like Murat. The Allies have no artillery leaders. They have, I think, one Cav general with Galitzin. Great. Prince Galitzin. However, let's take a look at these rules, and then we'll go back to trying to play. All right, limbering. French and Allied horse artillery batteries limber on a die roll. And we've got them for different, each different nationality has its own die roll. For limbering, there's modifiers to that as well, based on what they are. Cavalry leaders of special ability listed here. Cossacks and Prussian Landwehr, with the exception of the Grand Don Cossack Regiment. All Cossacks and Prussian Landwehr have to pass a morale check in order to even declare a charge à cheval. Don't you have to? I thought you had to do this anyway. Rot-row. Seem to remember opportunity charges you have to do one. Apparently Cav can charge without that. I'm not going to look it up now, but yeah. Okay. Okay, special morale rules. The French, Prussians, and Austrians take morale checks on each odd loss on a fire attack. The Russian infantry on each even loss, which gives them a little bit more sturdiness under fire, which is appropriate. Cav check morale for every loss they take during a fire check. Okay. And there's probably a cumulative penalty for each check that you have to make. Combat odds, if you fire at less than 1 to 3, it can't be done. Otherwise, you go to the edge of the chart with fire and melee. Special structures, walls, gates, and palaces, up to 6 increments may assault such a hex. Walled farms, churches, palaces, same, up to 6 increments per gate of a walled farm may assault the hex. Palace, same thing, no matter how many hexes can go. Prince Anton Garden, that's this huge thing here, and it basically has no effect. The walls of it and chateau are unassailable except at the gate. However, some of the masonry walls don't, so this was the wrong thing. There was something else. Der Grosser Garten. That's what. No, this is Der Grosser Garten. I don't know where this other thing is. I think it's probably in there or something. I don't know what the fuck it is. Prince Anton Garten. We got another Garten showing. I don't see it. I mean, you know. Anyway, it's got walls and crap. This thing is something else. This is Der Grosser Garten. Except for its palace, it has no impact on movement and combat. It's decorative only. Even the reflecting pond's only a foot or so deep. But treat the palace as a palace. Churches and cathedrals up to 6 increments can assault. The Schaffery in Friedrichstadt. It's treated as a palace, wherever it is. The bastions, unassailable except from within the city. If assaulted from within the city, up to 6 increments can assault, treated as a palace in that case. The artillery counter in a redoubt has a 3 front hex sides per all unlimbered artillery units, as indicated by the mortar. The facing of the counter may be shifted when it's legal to shift artillery facing. Redoubts and flèches. Up to 6 increments can assault each side of a redoubt or flèche, except for the open side. So most of these things that are out in the open are redoubts or flèches, and they're, oh, this is a bastion, I think. No, that's a redoubt. Okay. And again, you know, we've got limitations based on that, which we'll worry about mostly as we hit them. Chevaux de frise. It defends only one side of a hex. So these, I've placed these kind of on the roads. Some of them have units on top of them. Basically some barricades. Give you a little defense there. If attacked exclusively through that, only 6 increments can make an attack. Assault. If it's captured by the assaulting force, it's considered destroyed and removed from play. Sappers. Whenever a force containing a special structure includes either sappers or pioneers, the odds will shift one in favor of the attacker. At the end of the turn in which a sapper or pioneer... they can repair broken bridges. Each side rolls a die. If a sapper is there or a pioneer, it's got a chance of repairing the bridge. Fire. Okay, this is interesting. I had to look this up because I remembered there being fire defined in here, and indeed there is. We had this under howitzers and mortars. Special results: whenever a howitzer or mortar attack results on 65 or 66 on the dice, in addition to any other losses, it will be considered on fire unless the attack is August 27th. Okay? Except here, villages on the map have brown roofing, wherein the town and city hexes have red roofs. Red roofs are baked clay, impervious to fire, while brown roofs are very flammable. Fire attacks conducted by artillery on these hexes will result in a 65 or 66 on the die roll, will, in addition to whatever casualties they cause, set the hex alight. The firing player can choose to try to set the hex alight, and then anything that results in a casualty will do so. Mark that hex with a fire counter. I think both forms of fire are possible. Artillery, the howitzers and mortars will always possibly cause a fire in the grass and whatever. And these, if you're firing at villages, always have the opportunity to, and possible automatic, and they're not affected by the day. The rules for fire are then spelled out. March each sec. The number of hexes that can be set alight is limited by the number of fire informational counters. So remember, there is a limit to how much flame is available in the area. Tell that to the Allies when they bomb Dresde. Okay. Anyway, it blocks line of sight. You can't inhabit it, and then it turns into rubble eventually, which will be clear terrain for all intents and purposes. And I bet you the rubble's on the other side of the fire, so there's a limit to how much fire you can do over the course of a game. Yeah. Whatever. And I don't know that this fire actually goes out. And I mean, obviously it's not buildings. I don't know if it'll turn woods into rubble or something like that. Who knows? Because I'm not quite sure what the intention is here. It almost feels like these two rules don't quite mesh together, and it may be that it's supposed to only be howitzers and mortars that can cause fire, but that doesn't really make sense. Okay. Austrian Jägers and Prussian Schützen and Guard Jägers are armed with rifles. These have a range of 3. However, they have fire value halved at greater range. I think that's similar to the normal rule on firing. Okay, the complicated rule, battalion mass. The Austrian infantry likes to fight from line. However, they have a column formation variant that they can deliver assaults from. This is modified so the serried companies of the column can be closed up in the face of enemy cavalry, forming something kind of like a square. It's not as good as a normal square, but it can be done more easily. This is the battalion mass. Austrian infantry battalions not in line or general order are considered to be in battalion mass, which means there's no standard column formation for the Austrians. They do not form square. The 3 Jaeger battalions in Grenzen may form skirmish order. I'm not sure how you note that. I think they're actually automatically in skirmish if you put them in line formation. I'm not clear on that. There's no counters or anything to represent it. A battalion mass faces a hex vertex just as if it's a line. What? In order to distinguish, you must deploy it in 2 hexes in order to perform as a line. If an Austrian battalion is one hex and not in a train that's general order, it's considered in battalion mass. Players should note that battalion mass moves just like a column and assaults like a column, but it fires like a column and quacks like a duck, except when it's facing enemy cav charge, and then it's treated like a square. A unit in battalion mass does not subtract 2 movement points when it moves, but may move its full movement potential. Although it has all-around facing, it may only move through its front orientation as if it's a column. It does not roll on the square realization when in the charge zone of enemy cav, but instead must roll to stand. When it fires its printed fire value regardless of the attack coming from its front, side, or rear. Like a unit in square, like I'm going to remember this, right? It may make fire attacks on 3 non-contiguous adjacent hexes. Unlike a unit in square, however, it fires full printed value in all directions. An Austrian battalion in line, 2 hexes, when the target of a potential enemy charge or does not roll care realization, but it rolls to close into battalion mass. It could simply stand in line and face the charge as well if it wants. This is a morale check. Since it doesn't expend movement points doing this, it triggers neither opportunity action. If it passes the check, it forms battalion mass and shrinks to 1 hex. If it does not roll to stand, then in the actual charge phase. If it fails the check, it disorders. This is the same as skirmishers attempting to form a rallying square, except that the unit ends up in battalion mass and not with a square informational counter on it. Cav that melee a battalion in square do so at half their melee value and do not get a doubling bonus if charging in a straight line. Lance bonuses, however, are unaffected. Infantry that assaults a battalion mass melee it using their unmodified strength. Neither charging cav nor assaulting infantry enter the hex with a battalion mass in order to melee it, unlike a normal square. A battalion mass may not be ridden over. It's too big. Although, I don't know. I mean, if it's only 2 increments, it can't be in 2 hexes, and it's automatically battalion mass, and what the fuck? It gets its full firepower. What's going on here? Something going on here. Nor may form-friendly units move through a hex containing a battalion mass without possibly violating stacking. I guess you can do that with squares. I don't really remember. A unit in battalion mass has a zone of influence in all adjacent hexes. It has the fire defense of a column. A battalion mass may stack with another battalion mass if a leader is present. However, it may not stack with a battalion mass the way they can in other nationalities when units form squares, i.e., it needs the leader present. For artillery to stack, a leader must be present. Austrian infantry in their regimental presentation form a super battalion mass. This is indistinguishable from a regular one, except there's more men. And it can't form road column or column de route. Old Guard infantry charges. French Old Guard infantry. Any battalions belonging to the 1st and 2nd Grenadiers à Pied and 1st and 2nd Chasseurs à Pied, which I don't know if that's all the Old Guard. I think so, but I'm not absolutely positive. Well, those are Russians. What am I looking for? 1st and 2nd Grenadiers à Pied. Oh. And these are the chasseurs. Yeah, the Grenadiers are down here. The chasseurs are up there. But there are like weird things like these velites that don't count. Even though they're part of the Old Guard, they don't count for some reason, I guess. Can do an Old Guard charge rather than assaulting or rolling to close. An Old Guard charge is done during movement in lieu of an assault. When an Old Guard unit moves to assault or would roll to close, it declares charge instead. When the Old Guard unit starts to move, mark the hex from which it began this movement with the assault marker. When it becomes adjacent to the unit it's charging, instead of marking it with an assault marker, proceed immediately to an assault et melee. The target checks morale, -6 for old guard charge. If it fails, it disorders in place. Do not retreat. If it passes, it stands. The target unit gets defensive fire. The old guard makes its pre-morale check. If it fails, it disorders. If it passes, it gives offensive fire. Then it conducts melee. I think this sounds very similar to the normal engagement, although maybe the offensive fire comes a little later in the organization. If the old guard wins the hex and did not move its entire movement potential, then it can advance up to the full remainder and may end this movement with a conventional but second assault. If the old guard does not advance to a second assault, then it should be marked with a blank marker indicating it's moved and conducted melee and may not subsequently be interfered with, say, assaulted or charged à cheval by any enemy units that have not yet moved. Now this is really funky because I don't think, because it's I go, you go now, I don't think things are split up where you do a maneuvers segment No, I think the combat segment happens after all chip pulls. I'm going to have to look that fucker up. I thought you do all the combat, but now I'm beginning to think maybe that's not the case. What's weird there is you have a defensive and offensive fire phase, so now I'm fucking clueless about that. Okay. Old Guard charges may be conducted by Old Guard regiments, battalions, stacks of French units led by a leader from the Old Guard that aren't Old Guard but have one of the cited battalions on top of the stack. Assaults that involve the Old Guard infantry but are not declared as Old Guard charges are just normal. The Old Guard mounted band. Any PGD French unit that's within 4 hexes of this unit during reorganization will improve their morale recovery die roll by 9. Gunners and replacement gunners. The fixed artillery positions are manned by 2 counters each. One counter is the cannons, and the other is the gunners that work the gun. An unmanned battery may not fire or defend itself in melee. The presence of gunners are required for that. Note how the values given to each of the gunners and the guns are separated out for specific functions, while all those numbers are normally present on a normal battery. If the gunners are killed or run away, the gun is abandoned. Like regular infantry gunners that recover good morale, they may move and reoccupy to reman guns so abandoned. Regular infantry gunners don't exist. Likewise, the Dresden garrison has some units or companies of spare gunners at their disposal who can do this as well. Replacement gunners. Within Dresden garrison, there's a depot battalion belonging to the Old Guard. An eliminated company of gunners may be replaced by deducting 1 increment from this unit of veteran soldiers. Remove the increment from this battalion. As if they're casualties, reconstitute the company of gunners adjacent to the unit from the dead company on the organizational chart. In the next regroup action chit, this company automatically runs to the gun emplacement that needs it, no matter how far away it is. Awesome. Abandoned guns are not considered spiked regardless of the enemy's intent. They sit unmanned and silent. Visual identification of the scenario number has been placed. Yeah, that's the numbers that I was proud of and happy about. Allied Corps and Wings. Perusing the Allied organizational display, players will note several corps are mentioned. Yet with the exception of Kleist, Gulai, and Klenau, the organizations do not look like corps. Well, I don't fucking know how to tell whether something's a corps or not. But I guess that's useful to people who are used to seeing this. I can't see it. This is because they are not. Great. Several significant portions of the Russian army are off-map with Prince Eugene. Lots of words are being used here. La, 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 la. Thus, Wittgenstein and Milodorovich have remaining bits of several corps each, and we will treat these as corps for the purpose of those rules, but they're really wings. Hesse-Homburg's force is also an anomaly. It's a small army of divisions. It may not form a corps-sized MU encompassing all its diverse parts. If Hesse-Homburg creates an MU, it can be up to 3 divisions at any one time, assuming the leaders are within his range of 6 hexes and they are activated. The Allied player, of course, may distribute his CPs among the other divisions of this force and thus move the entire thing when it is time for the foes to move. Yeah, because the command points Right. So Hess-Homburg's command, he could take 3, and the other divisions could all be individually activated. However, one spent point on Hess-Homburg only is 3 divisions. Breaking bridges. Infantry can try to destroy bridges. You roll a die. If you're adjacent, try to put a bridge out counter. Napoleon has an A morale bonus. He will automatically rally units, and we'll just load this one up as a separate addendum.